Thank you for watching this video. Today we will be doing technical analysis on the S&P 500 for Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. And for this analysis, we will be using stockcharts.com. That is the charting service that I use and pay for, and I will leave a link to their site in the description box below this video. My name is Rodney Constable. I have over 30 years of investing experience, including over 25 years of experience trading stocks and options. I am a former financial advisor, a former vice president of a major mutual fund company, and I am the president and founder of Simple Market Signals at simplemarketsignals.com. The S&P 500 was up 18 basis points today, and we closed at 3669.01, making this another new all-time closing high on the S&P 500 right there. The first chart that we're going to look at is a 2-day, 2-minute chart of the S&P 500. So each candlestick does represent 2 minutes of trading. The reason I'm going to this format is I wanted you to be able to see this gap down at the open. So to start off the day today on Wednesday, December 2nd, we gapped down at the open, made our lows at about 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time today, and then slowly made our way into the positive zone. Of course, dipped back down into the negative for just a few minutes here around 2 o'clock this afternoon. By the way, the dotted blue line is where we finished up yesterday, and then we were able to close near the highs of today's session, again making a new all-time closing high of 3669.01 on the S&P 500, up 18 basis points. The all-time high, intraday high, in the S&P 500 was set yesterday at 3678.45, right there at about 2:15 yesterday afternoon. So 3678.45 is the all-time intraday high, and 3669.01 is now the new all-time closing high. And of course, yesterday was a all-time closing high in the S&P 500 as well, but we outdid that by a whopping 18 basis points today, and we'll take a further look at that in the next chart. The next chart that we're going to look at on the S&P 500 starts at the end of October, and each candlestick represents 1 day of trading. I wanted to really focus in on what has happened since the end of October, because I want you to really see what I'm seeing in the charts. So let's start off with the obvious. Of course, today was an all-time closing high on the S&P 500, as was yesterday. So both of these days right here were new all-time closing highs in the S&P 500. Let's kind of work our way backwards, starting with this blue line here. This blue line is set at 3645.99, and the reason I put that there was to show you the all-time intraday high in the S&P 500 prior to yesterday. The reason that's important is you can see from this point, we just basically went sideways. So all of the momentum really in November happened in the first week or so of trading, okay? And you can see here that we had 4 positive candles in a row in the first 4 days of trading in November. Then we had this negative day, and then we had that big news from Pfizer, right, about their coronavirus vaccine, and that sent us to, at that time, the all-time intraday highs, and that was also the first day that we had ever traded above 3,600, which is this blue line here. So the candle right here, right, November 9th, very important for several reasons. Again, that's the first time we ever traded above 3,600. However, we couldn't hold it. We didn't close above 3,600 that day. Took us a few more days, and then we finally had all of our trading above 3,600 on November 16th, including the first close ever above 3,600. And this was on the back of the Moderna vaccine news, which I thought was as good or better than the Pfizer news. But as you can see here, we never got back to those highs, right, on the Moderna news. So I hope what you're seeing here, and I hope what I'm conveying, is the lack of momentum that we've seen in the markets really since November 9th. Yes, we've closed at 2 all-time closing highs over the last 2 days, but just barely above the high that we hit on November 9th. So we've been predominantly sideways for about 3.5 weeks here with a slight upward trajectory. But you can see here that the momentum that we had coming into the month of November was really during that first week, and then we've been going basically sideways to slightly up since then. Okay, so we haven't seen the same level of momentum over the last 3.5 weeks that we saw during the first week of November. So that really, to me, is quite telling. And then the other thing I want to point out here is we had these first 4 days, right, where the market was positive, 4 days in a row, positive, and then a negative day, and then a positive, negative, positive, negative. But we have not been able to stitch together more than 2 positive days in a row in the S&P 500 since the first week in November, okay? So that's another thing to watch. So the question becomes, tomorrow, can we get a third positive day in a row, or are we going to continue this pattern that we've had since right here, where we have a positive, negative, couple positives, a negative, negative, positive, negative, So hopefully you guys are getting the gist of what I'm trying to share with you here, in that we just haven't seen a ton of momentum in the markets since right here, okay? We've been sideways to slightly up. We have not had 3 positive days in a row in the S&P 500 since the first week in November. All of these things are telling me that we may be getting just a little bit toppy here, okay? We may be running out of gas. Yes, we're making some upside progress, but it's in very minor amounts, okay? Today's all-time closing high was only 18 basis points higher than yesterday's all-time closing high. I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm just trying to share with you what I'm seeing in the charts and the kind of sideways, choppy trading action that we've had since November 9th. Do you know the level of risk in the stock market on an ongoing basis? Simple Market Signals. It's like having risk radar for the U.S. stock market. Simple Market Signals is less than $20 per month. Simple Market Signals is for financial professionals and individual investors. What is it costing you to not have this information? To get started, go to simplemarketsignals.com.